Imam Noah Seifullah. Imam, salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless us this morning to come together and be successful with this Talim. I had talked to Brother Imam Rasul about a subject that I think is important for us as a community, more particularly as individuals that's growing our community, to take into consideration. We are a community that have ideals about how we should develop and participate in the development of society. But one of the things that strikes me is that so often I find individuals who are committed to that cause and by and large put a lot of energy and effort into it. But at the same time, I notice a deficit inside the human being or the person that even they may not realize. So what I've asked the Imam for the opportunity to do is just speak briefly on a subject matter that I think is important. I've kind of titled it like the required human structure for self-development and worldly progress. And so this morning I want to speak to that subject. But before I do so, let me also raise something that's a vital concern, or should be, to the community, and that is the ongoing existence and functionality of the Muslim Journal. Some of you may have heard that the Muslim Journal is seeking financial assistance to continue to remain as a vibrant part of the structure of our community, in the history of our community. And while some of us may or may not have different concepts about the value of the Muslim Journal, one thing it is our paper, and it is something that we have as an institution in our community. And therefore, as a mechanism or a means by which we can continue to keep our image, our message in front of the public, I think it's important. It behooves all of us to be very conscientious about what it requires and what should be our commitment to sustaining and maintaining the Muslim Journal. Now, I do write for the Muslim Journal. I've said it publicly and I'll say it again, so everybody's pretty much knowing my position on it. I don't get paid from the Muslim Journal. I don't get any expenses covered or anything like that. So I don't want anybody to think that this is a conversation or a presentation that has a personal impact on me financially or any other reason. But I do think that the paper is a very vital institution, and that as a community we should be responding to the call for help in every way that we can. Now, as I traveled around the country, and this is really in line with the subject I'm talking about, the required human structure for self-development and world progress. As I travel around the country, I am amazed, if not appalled, at how many Muslims in our community that don't have a subscription to the Muslim Journal. And yet, we will be participating in conversations and engaging other communities and other people about what they should be doing in order to advance the message of Imam W.D. Muhammad, and ultimately a message of the Islamic community throughout the world through the eyes and the concerns of the people who follow the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad. But we don't have subscriptions to the Muslim Journal. Now, most of us sometimes will take out a subscription to the Ebony, Oprah magazine, and different things like that. Some for informational interest, and some just to say we supporting a cause. Right now I'm saying it doesn't matter what a person's motivation is for the Muslim Journal. I think all Muslims should have at least coming into their house a Muslim Journal. And you would be surprised, and some of you would not be, at how many Muslims don't have a subscription to the Muslim Journal, and how many Muslims don't even read the Muslim Journal for that point of view. And so a lot of the good things and the great things about our community is being passed down secondhand, and sometimes with people's own personal opinion about what the information is. So that being said, I do want to encourage all of us to look at our own resources and say, how can we support the Muslim Journal? Now, some of you know we could do it with subscriptions, you could do it with donations. I do understand that if you have a business, you could even buy ad space in advance. and they would hold it and give you a receipt for it, and you can use it sometime in advance. But all these kind of techniques in terms of providing financial support to the Muslim Journal, I would hope would be considered by the people that's on this call. And at the same time, when we leave this call this morning, that we will spread the message of urgency for a response from our community to come in and let's save an institution. I don't know if it's on its way out or not, and I don't want to overstate that fact, but I do know it has a need for financial support. And I want to encourage all of us that don't have a subscription, at a minimum, let's get a subscription. Those of us who have the means to give endorsement ads or got business ads that we like to put in the paper, that we take the opportunity at this time to do that. And for those of us that just want to make a charitable donation to something, we can make a charitable donation to the Muslim Journal. So that's a message of urgency regarding the paper, the newspaper, and would encourage all of us to look at that as a part of our dawah and outreach in this community, is to keep that Muslim Journal circulating, because it is a very important face of our community. So with that, I want to once again thank the believers for giving me an opportunity to talk on this subject this morning. And I want to kind of preface the opening of this by reading Surah 29, Ayat 23. And it says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Those who reject the signs of Allah in the meeting with Him, it is they who shall despair of my mercy, and it is they who will suffer a most grievous penalty. Now, the subject that I chose, or topic I chose for this morning, is the required human structure for self-development and worldly progress. And I want to point out that oftentimes when we begin to talk about these subject matters, that we may at times take on a intellectual ideal of what that is, and in another respect we may take it on as a physicalized concept in terms of what is our capabilities and what are we capable of doing within the structure of the human family as we live on a daily basis. And most of us in the Muslim community that I've encountered have very high ambitions about what we can do, how we can do it, and how we can be a contributor to the growth and development of humanity as well as our society. But one of the things I found in my own personal experience as well as studying other people, to achieve the highest and best use of our life, we must be guided by the correct logic or intellectual and spiritual disposition. But by that I mean is, this is not just a life that we live through how we impress others or how others see us, but it's a life that we live by being very conscientious about who we are on a personal, individual level in terms of our intellectual logic and our spiritual disposition. Where did it come from? How do we get it? How do we sustain it? And how do we move it forward? Oftentimes I tell people that one of the essential ways that we can be effective as a human being is we have to look within in order to see out. We have to know who we are, how we functioning, and how we're able to be a committed and a contributing part of the broader community that we want to impact. Now, I know, and many of you that's sitting on the line today, you probably have thought about that and reflected on that. What I'm trying to do is to alert us, this is just not a theoretical and philosophical discussion. This is about really awakening to what Allah has created and the great power and authority that Allah has invested with us. This particular element of His creation, which we call human, man, what Allah has invested with us, and the great responsibility we have to carry forward. But at the same time, realizing that the support of Allah is with us as we go forward in this mission. One of the essential building blocks and coming into the authority of a human being that Allah wants us to be is the accept the authority of Allah without doubt, intelligent and spiritual doubt. So we don't have any intelligent doubt, we don't have any spiritual doubt about Allah's control and influence over this creation that He's created. We should look at it in terms of ourselves with as much certainty as we see the mountain standing firm, or the sun hanging in the sky, or the wind that blows and carries the sea from land to land and water from place to place in order to bring about new life. All of these are activities governed and managed by Allah. He created us as a unique human being, or a unique element of His creature in the creation, because we have the ability to think, to talk, to act independently. And also we have the ability to influence each other and change each other's mind. But if we're not careful in this whole dynamic of activity, then we lose sight of the fact that we are a creature created by Allah. Allah has structured us for a purpose to be carried out within the entirety of His creation, not just in our own house and in our own block, but in the entirety of His creation. And that we should be working to see how can we come to the fullness of that. The last time I was on the call, I talked about business. And one of the things that I want people to know is that you really can't be successful at business if you don't know who you are. I mentioned at the last call that you got to know what your interest is. You got to know the thing that motivates you. And if you don't know that, you won't be very successful at business. Well, that don't only apply to business, it applies to anything. You really won't be great at anything if you don't know who you are. And you have to be able to look inside of yourself and come to a conclusion on who I am and why do I do what I do. I had an interesting conversation with a Christian minister last week. And some of you may know that there's a tremendous amount of discussion in this country, if not around the world, about Shura law, in terms of the Muslim being able to govern their community and society based on the Shura and the laws or the edicts of the Islamic religion. So there's a lot of concern about that within the Christian community, or the community in general. And what I explained to this person, who was very curious about it because they've been confronted with lectures and discussions on Islam and the place of Islam in America, is that Shura law is no different than Jewish law or Christian law or any other law that is predicated upon what people understand to be the will of God. They had failed to see that the United States government, at the very core of its own sense of who it is, says that they are based on Christian principles. And that as they've structured the law, the moral fiber of that law is predicated upon what they think God wants the human being to do and how the human being should treat each other. We as Muslims, we have that same kind of responsibility, is to look at the life from the point of view as what do God want us to do? How do He want us to do it? And how do He want us to exercise ourselves in the course of achieving what He wants us to achieve? But the interesting thing He did for us is that He gave us the ability of reasoning and the ability to make the decision whether we want to follow it or not. Now I think that that's a very important responsibility that He gave us, because with that kind of responsibility, we're much more capable of leading the society in ways in which a tree stationary in one spot can't. A fish that's restricted to water and can't get out can't do that. Other animals that we went around this world and conquered and put in a cage and bring our kids out to the zoo and let them wave at them, laugh at them while they're in the cage, they can't do that. But the human being is unique in that the human being can even overcome all of those circumstances and still have a drastic and a very profound effect within Allah's creation. So if we're going to be successful at anything, then we have to be successful at knowing who we are and what's our relationship with our Creator. Now, many of us on this line would say, well, why are you talking like that? You're just talking to the converted. Well, I'm telling you, based on a lot of conversations I've had people may be converted, but they really don't understand it. And they don't, and it's taken me a long time, and I continue to be a part of that, to understand how important it is for us to understand the human essence in that relationship to the Creator, which is Allah, and then how do we go about dispensing that great responsibility that He has given us in what we call the human package. And when we are in tune with that, we walk in this world and we don't have any doubt. We have as much confidence as the sun hanging in the sky. We have as much confidence as the animals that roam the earth. We know that Allah created this, and we know that Allah has given us certain abilities to exercise what He's given us, and so we don't have any doubt about the direction that we're going in. And with that, we can begin to grow as a community. We look around, everywhere I go, there's a concern about how do we grow as a community? What should we be doing as a Muslim society? Oh, that's a dog. I was about to say I thought I was breaking up on the microphone or something.
Whoever got will you the phone, please? Please mute the phone. Star 6. We really hear your dog barking and shit. It's Salim. Please mute the phone. Star 6. Something. Star 6. Just press star and number 6. And mute your dog out.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry for getting distracted like that, but it was kind of distracting me, and I'm probably was distracting other people. But the moral intent in relationship to Allah must be guided. Must be the guide over all our decisions. You know, some of us have been a part of this discussion on intelligent design, and while in just debatable circumstances, it seems like a very intriguing ideal that man has grown, he's beginning to understand Allah's creation, and so therefore he's able to structure it and give purpose and meaning to it in a way that many people have not been able to do in the past. And so we begin to allow our intelligence to guide the work that we do, and in many cases we take out the morality that God has required of us as a part of our base human identity. And as a result of that, the laws and the actions, while in some circumstances seem to be great and produce great things, but eventually it begins to erode and fall apart. Because that concept, without the moral authority that Allah has called us to be accountable for, eventually turns out to be abusive. And that's what has happened in a lot of places in society. We look at the workplace. I had a conversation with some people that was talking about the investment market, the great economies of the world. And what you see in being exposed today, that is many of those people was criminals with a necktie and a briefcase. They was as immoral in the responsibility that they had as a business person as you could ever find any criminal sitting in the penitentiary today. They caused havoc in the lives of people. They ruined the lives of people while they prospered and got great money and wealth for themselves. And as a result of that, has destroyed economies all over the world, destroyed people's lives all over the world, have no sensitivity to that, but at the same time saying they're building the world. Now, we as Muslims, as outside observers by and large, should take a look at that and say, now, is that the way that we want to carry our life? Do we think that's the real responsibility God put us here? That we go out and build things, get as much money as we can without regard for the impact it has on the lives of other people? Or should we be much more moral and much more intellectual in terms of how we go about structuring the world that we're going to structure? But if we're not looking inside, and we're not affirming for ourselves that relationship that we have with God, then I beg the question of, what is your guidance? When you're in business, what is your guidance? When you're in social responsibility, what is your guidance? How do you see yourself? How do you see that responsibility? As a matter of fact, it's not just a responsibility that is to be viewed in public, it's a responsibility that we should reflect on every day, and even while we're alone and while we're walking down the street and nobody know who we are, what we're doing. We have a responsibility to adhere to the guides that Allah has blessed us to come to know. And because that has become a very, very weak element in the society in general, we have this rampant corruption going on. And when we look at the Muslim community in particular, we don't have a great bustling prosperity, and not just material prosperity, but spiritual prosperity. Because some of you may be like I am. You look around, you wonder what happened to the Muslim spirit. I mean, we can come together on occasion, have a burst of a spirit of something like that, but what happened to the sustained spirit of the people as we travel around this country and travel around the world? And specifically, I'm also talking about the community of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Now, we got pockets of that, but with the great leadership that the Imam provided us, many of us are missing it. And I'm saying what we're missing is the very keen point that the Imam was making, and that was the human structure for self-development and world progress. Well, we can call it community progress. But many of us failed to grasp what it was that he was talking about in all those lectures that we go back and remember him and reflect on what he was saying. He continued to talk about the development of the human being, the conscientious development of the human being, the coming into awareness and the knowledge of yourself as a human being. Understand that relationship that you have to God. Understand that relationship that you have to society, but at the same time saying that you really can't develop as a community until you develop the community yourself. You have to begin to understand what is my responsibility within this structure that Allah has placed me in. So all our decisions as Muslims should be guided by the moral and intellectual design that Allah wants us to obey. And I'm saying that as we walk, as we talk, as we act, we should never lose sight, never lose consciousness of our relationship with Allah. And that shouldn't just be a theoretical thing. You know, you find some Muslims that Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, you know, all the time got some little saying they say. But sometimes when you look at their action, you wonder, well, how much of that is impacting you, or is that just something you saying that sound like flowery words? I'm not sitting here today want to say I want to be a critic of that. But I'm more so saying for those of us who hear this message and may want to take it on to other people, we got to get serious about our understanding, our relationship with Allah. That is step number one. I don't care how great we want to think we're going to be, how big we want to be. If we don't come to some firm understanding based on morality and intellectual design, if we don't come to some firm understanding of that, we won't prosper very far as a community as well as an individual. We have to, without Allah as our guide, we don't have a strong foundation of life support. Now, for those of you that want to reference some of what I'm saying, I'm going to give you some surahs that you can go to. I'm not going to sit here and try to read them today. But what I'm saying is backed up by Quran. I mentioned to you Surah 29, Ayat 23. There's Surah 30. Many of you are familiar with that Allah, the design on which He built the human being. The other surah that you might want to look at is Surah 29, Ayats 34 and 35. And then Surah 29, Ayat 41, 44, and 45. Now those particular ayats reinforce what Allah has been saying to us as a created creature. That He created us, He gave us certain facilities, and that man disrespected what He had created. And because he disrespected what He had created, or did not embrace it, then he lost his way. And ultimately he fell into the severe punishment or severe judgment of Almighty God Allah because he lost his way. And so what I'm trying to say to us this morning is that we have to be very conscientious about our relationship with God. The thing that we don't want to do is have what I call as a ceremonial relationship with God. We make our 5 prayers, we give our zakat, We fast Ramadan. We do all the 5 requirements, but we do it as a mechanical thing. This is what we're supposed to do, as opposed to looking inside of us and saying, this is what we do. We Muslims, this is what we do. And with that kind of conviction, the latter conviction that I was mentioning, this is what we do, then that would permeate everything we do. How we respect each other, how we talk to each other, how we interact with each other. And as we go into other avenues of life expression, whether it be business or social work or it be some other endeavor that we think is a contributor to our life as well as the life of the society, we will always have that in mind. This is what we do, because we're Muslims and we follow in the guidance of Allah. And that's not a theoretical framework, but that is a framework of reality as certain, as I pointed out before, as the sun hanging in the sky, the mountains coming up out of the earth, the fish in the water, the winds that blow the seeds and the rain from one place to another. How Allah has expanded this massive universe, this massive reality beyond anything we can imagine. You know, just the other day I was sitting up thinking, and I thought about how great Allah's world is and how small in spirit sometimes we are in relationship to that. Many of us have lived a life that probably was pretty challenging, and at times may think that we came to all that the life is. And sometimes we get so depleted in our energies because of the sense of finality as well as the inability to achieve the goals that we have, that we think we've seen and experienced all that Allah has. You know, and as I thought about that, I also thought about the people that was on these various continents around the world. And some of you who are familiar with the history of humanity, you've also studied the same thing. How man stood on the shores of his own environment and looked out at the vastness of the ocean and concluded that all the life in the world was the life on the island or that parcel of land in which they were standing. They had a concept that if you go beyond horizon, that you would fall off the planet in some kind of way, disappear. There was nothing beyond that point. So many of the people were landlocked or ventured out a very short distance because they feared that all the life that they know and understood was contained right there where they are. You know, to a certain extent, we living in a world today that's pretty much boxed in with that same kind of concept. Yeah, we done crossed the oceans. We done went around the world. We done touched pieces of the earth that we never thought that we had touched in our life. And when we go to these different parts of the world as we know it, the earth as we know it, then we find that there is a people that have a language, that have a culture, have a system, have a relationship with God that's similar to the way that we see God and similar to the way that we exercise ourselves as a human being. And I asked myself as I was reflecting, how would I feel if I was on that boat and I crossed that ocean, overcoming the fear of going beyond the unknown, and all of a sudden find that there's another whole land base outside of the purview of the people standing back on the island. They too have a society. They too have a culture. And where they thought that man was falling off the end of the world, in reality he was expanding his world. Allah has us in a similar situation today. Even if we use the analogy and take it to space travel, some of us spend time trying to fathom what is Allah's world and what is the beginning and what is the end. Allah said if you had all the oceans and all the trees as pens, you could never comprehend all that I created. So in many cases, as we stand here today, especially the Muslim community that's inspired by the leadership of Imam Noah Muhammad, where we are, we're embarking upon crossing that continent. We're crossing that ocean. We're going beyond the horizon where people thought if you go beyond that, you'll fall off. Some people listen to the Imam and they say, I can't understand the Imam. He's too deep for me. He be real deep. Well, he's not really that deep. It's only because we're shallow in our understanding of the broad world. So as a result of that, we do like the people that were standing on the island that looked at the horizon and said, I won't go beyond that out of fear that I'll fall off the other side. Had they broadened their understanding, was able to broaden their understanding, then they would find a whole big world out there, a whole big universe out there that they had never contemplated before. And that's the point I think that we are as Muslims. We've been blessed to come into this Quran. We've had great leadership. But in many cases, we have begun to be just like the people standing on that island or on that other parcel of land on the other side of the world. We think that there's nothing beyond this, and we try to live the life in its totality in that very small space. But once we get out there and begin to explore and let ourselves expand and let ourselves see the world in a much broader spectrum than what we have been accustomed to, we find out there's a whole world out there just that has tremendous benefit and tremendous support for everything that we want to do. Now, I want to also and use that analogy to look at space travel, because that's what we're looking at now. Our oceans is the ocean of space. Many of the things that's going on today, man has engineered himself a way to transport himself up off the ground into other areas of space, onto other planets. And with the knowledge of the history of humanity, as I just explained it, there's no telling what the life's going to look like as it continues to expand into other boundaries and other places within a large creation that we never imagined to be like that as we study life and as we study the history of mankind on the planet Earth. So we stand at a point of departure for a great adventure for humanity. As Muslims with the ability to understand our relationship to God and understand the great capacity that God has given us, then we also should be a part of that pioneering and that expanding spirit that we too going to be a human population that contributes to the expansion and the growth of humanity and opportunities for everything in the world. Because when man expands, everything has an opportunity to expand. The trees, the water, everything has an opportunity to improve itself. And everything that man has touched with good intentions have turned out to be of great benefit, unlocked for the benefit of humanity as well as the creation. So once again, if we don't see ourselves in the proper perspective, then we can't take that step. We be inhibited by our own fears. And with a strong relationship to Allah, and understand that Allah created us for a purpose, gave us the insight, gave us the means, and always is there supporting us in all of this greatness that He's given us. He's standing there and He's involved with us, supporting us as we go forward. With that confidence, then we too will be a part of that emerging new history of the creation as well as humanity in general. And so once again, when we look at things that are important to us, that we want to try to achieve, I said when I came on, I talk about business, but you can't be a good businessman unless you have this kind of spirit. You can't see yourself transversing the world, embarking on big missions, doing big things, unless you have that kind of spirit or that kind of vision. And the only thing that you have to give you the confidence to do it is your faith in the one who created you. And if you've looked inside of yourself and you understand yourself and you understand the dependency you have because of the shortness of information and insight that you have, then you have no other choice but say, La ilaha illallah. That there's no God but the one God could do this. And if there's one God that did all of this, then Allah has put me on a path that I cannot fail as long as I stay connected to that God in terms of my moral convictions and my intellectual design. I don't go crazy with any of that. I try to discipline myself based on the information that He's given me. I study the great prophets and the messengers of Allah, and I see how they live their life. And then I begin to say, what is the potential within me? Some of us read the Quran and biblical studies and other historical knowledge, and we get stuck in history. We look at them and just, oh man, Moses was great, man. You see what Moses did? Well, we go back and talk about Abraham, as if Abraham was the end all of humanity. But the Imam has explained to us that those characters that we read about, although they were real men and real people doing real things, but in the scripture of Allah, they are archetypes of human development, human growth, and human expression. The great things that they achieved is signs and symbols that Allah has sent to us to show us what is the potential that we can achieve. We're not just going to be locked on the fact that Solomon was a great man, an industrialist. Sometime I'll be talking, I ask the question, who do you think led the Industrial Revolution in the world of humanity? People scratch their head to be trying to figure it out. And when I tell them Solomon did it, then they become in awe. I said, but when you study the history of Solomon, Solomon did great things. He brought great industrialization to the planet Earth for humanity. Another great archetype of a leadership that we have, they talk now about revolutionaries and who brings about social change. One of the great men that we had was Moses. Moses went to Pharaoh and said, let my people go. Same message that we've been preaching all over the world. Let the oppressed and deprived people of the world go. Let them become one with God. So those archetypes that we find give us an example of the great capacity that we have as a human being. And when we look at them, we shouldn't just look at them and say we're looking back on pages of history, but we're looking at the true potential that God has given us as a human being, and also the responsibility that we have. And we should also see the moral fiber that was incorporated in their decisions and their views and their conversations with the circumstances and the situations that they encountered. And those great achievements that we admire within them, that we know that we have the potential and we have the wherewithal to be as great in our own space and time today. So my message today to us, and maybe in later times when I have an opportunity to come back, is that we have to look inside of ourselves to know how to manage what's outside of ourselves. We have to find the greatness within ourselves in order to establish greatness outside of ourselves. And this is not a philosophical conversation where you got all this wake up in the morning and do this positive thinking thing. This is coming into a reflective understanding. Reflective means reading the Quran, studying the Sunnah and the Hadith of the Prophet to see how he went about living and carrying it out. Reading the great other messengers and those who were responsible and under the guidance of God to see how did they exercise themselves and understand the greatness that God has given us. Not that I'm so in love with Moses or so in love with Solomon or anything, but I really love that human potential expressing itself. And the Imam said one time, Imam W.D. Muhammad said one time, that whatever you see another man do, know that you too have already achieved that he's doing. All you got to do is build on it at that time. Because when Allah give it to one man, that means the knowledge is available for every man. Every one of us have the same knowledge, the same capability, and the same ability that we have, that we witness and see in other people. Now, just as well as the ability to progress, we have the same ability to fail. And misguided people who reject the guidance of God and want to institute something else, then they begin to fail. Yeah, I mentioned the crooks that sitting up in them office places with their ties and their briefcase had great responsibility over the finance and the economy of the world. But because they began to use an intellectual approach only to the guidance and the development of structures that manage humanity, their moral compass went astray. It not only went astray in the financial markets, it went astray in the social market. We had a corruption of social violations going on in this society. The most highest epidemic that we heard about was HIV. Just spread everywhere all of a sudden. And then you find this corruption in the financial. You ask yourself, why did that happen? Because when you look at it at its core, the people who initiated that on a large scale, by and large, no longer followed the moral compass that Allah had placed within the human being to tell you, no, you shouldn't do that. No, you shouldn't engage in that. That's not the right thing to do. As Muslims, wherever we go and whatever we do, we should be following the pattern that Allah has created within us. And I think if we could get back to that point in a mobilized way and an enthusiastic way, we'll see the enthusiasm of the community begin to grow. We'll begin to look at our brothers and see ourselves. We'll begin to have an appreciation and love where we'll do things and don't have to worry about do we get paid. We'll be able to look into circumstances and say, how can I make the greatest impact for the greater good of humanity as well as myself? And I think to a large extent that that's what's missing in our community, where we don't have that big blazing fire of enthusiasm coming out. Whereas I started off talking about the Muslim Journal here is a very vital institution that exists in our community. There should be a bonfire of response for people coming to try to save that particular institution that we have. But also we should try to save the institution of the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad. More particularly, say the institution of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessing be upon him. All of those kind of things, as Muslims, we should take serious responsibility to make sure they remain established as institutions in the minds and the hearts of the people of the world. But if we are not looking inside ourselves, we don't have an understanding about ourselves and our conviction to God, and we don't walk with God with no doubt, In everything that we do, in our morality, there is no doubt. In our intellectual design and understanding, there is no doubt. In our execution, there is no doubt. Because my faith, my destiny, is tied to the will of God. And when you have that kind of conviction, you have that kind of lack of doubt, there's no mountain that you can't climb. There's no ocean that you can't cross, and there's no space that you can't traverse. All of the world, all of the creation become open to the human being that understands that. And I pray that Allah bless us as we continue to grow, that we see that as a very serious responsibility for the Muslims under the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad, is to make sure that the intellectual design of this world, even if it's led by Muslims, does not move to the point where it excludes the morality that is commanded and demanded of us by Allah as we read it in our scriptures. And we don't take them apart and say morality over here, intelligent design over here. We say they go together. You got to have strong morality and you got to have a strong intellectual design to what you do, because Allah gave us the capabilities to be able to do that. And we should be training our kids the same way, that they should look at the world in a much broader perspective than that's just what I got to do sitting in my own house fantasizing about something I see on TV. Many of our kids are caught up in daydream now with those video games and whatnot. They're all outside of themselves. They can't even see themselves anymore. Caught up in the world of synthetic existence. And they sit there and they have a sense of the world and they command of the world through their little iPads and their little whatever different games that they play with them joysticks. And we shouldn't want to be part of life like that. This is not a joystick world. This is some real stuff for real men and real women. And that we have a serious responsibility, because Allah has blessed us to come into the knowledge and embracing of the Quran. He's blessed us with probably one of the greatest leaders in modern times in terms of speaking to the human structure based on the moral and intellectual design of Allah. No one has penetrated that like Imam W.D. Muhammad, especially for the common man. You know, this conversation we sitting up here talking now, they used to have that way back in theological schools for the very elite and the very few. They always said that the people in general was not educated enough or intellectually strong enough to engage in these kind of discussions. So we'll sit up and we'll chew on them and we'll digest it, and then we'll spoon feed what we spit out to them. But we've been blessed with a leader that let a lot of our people, if they cannot have full embrace comprehension, but have the confidence that they think they understand what the Imam was talking about, to be talking in an arena about a subject that has been profound in the mind of man since the beginning of mankind. And that is man's existence in his relationship to God and man's ability to relate and expand within the creation that God created. That has been with man throughout all time. We sit, many of us, can sit in a coffee shop and have a chit-chat conversation about this and won't be at no way perturbed about the depth that we go into. But the thing that lacks, in my opinion, is the conviction that's necessary to act on it and carry it forward. And I say that conviction comes when we reflect inside of ourselves and see that I am truly a believer. I have no doubt. I have no doubt in my moral commitment. I have no doubt in my intellectual commitment. And everywhere I go and everything I do, I'm exercising my life based on the morality that I understand that Allah demands of me and the intellectual responsibility that I have to execute it. And therefore I treat my brother right, I treat my sister right, I treat the environment right, I treat the animals right, because I think God commands this of me because of the great responsibility He's given me under this title or under this existence as a human being. And I pray that Allah bless us that take that kind of spirit forward as we go forward today and as we go forward throughout the rest of our life. Because we are a very unique species, very, very unique species. And more particularly, those of us that's on this phone, I would hope all of us, but if somebody on this phone don't supposed to be on this phone, they'll soon be on the phone with us with the committed mind. But if everybody on this phone call have a genuine interest in advancing the human soul, the human spirit, and the human responsibility in this world, because otherwise we wouldn't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning having this conversation. So we're very committed, and I pray that Allah bless us for this commitment, that we be able to make a significant contribution to the world as well as this community. Brother Imam, I'd like to take this opportunity, if we have time to do so, to invite people to ask questions or engage in a discussion maybe about what I said or something they may have on their mind that came to their mind while I was talking that they would like to explore a little further.
Yes, sir. We may open up questions. Before we do, I greatly appreciate comments bringing that subject to us, and I pray that Allah bless you to do so.
Alhamdulillah.
My mind and my opinion, it was a beautiful presentation. And inshallah, we want to invite you back again, and it's all possible next Wednesday, inshallah. So we open it up now for questions. The brother mentioned the Muslim talk about Bill Hawk. The brother mentioned the newspaper, our paper, and I believe what he said. I believe that if the brothers and sisters that are on this line this morning, including myself, everyone, we take out at least a 6-month subscription or better. I don't know no one personal income, but I know that we can if we sacrifice. I agree with the brother in everything he said. We have to learn how to really and truly sacrifice to keep our community whole and to keep our community to progress. And the paper is essential to us. And we should take out a prescription, all of us. And we should bring that to our community, our masjid on Friday at Juma, and speak to the people. That should be our conversation for Friday at Juma. To make sure the people understand the value of our paper and the value of newspaper period, especially our paper. Because that's what we had. Malcolm X started this off way back when. And we shouldn't let anything get in our way for supporting this paper. This paper is like our bloodline. It's vital to our community, and it's vital to our community too. So I believe what the brother said about that paper is very important. And we on this line this morning. We should put in our mind, when we get off this line, if we haven't already done that, immediately go out and take out a 6-month or a year prescription for the Muslim Journal. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
This is Sharif Alain. My question is, as I was listening to you talk about the individual and the global community, and I know you've had some travels around the world. What do you think the opportunities for those of us who are Muslim on Humanity Muhammad to do global commerce or global business?
I think the opportunity is very great myself, but this factor I talked about, you have to look inside of yourself and know yourself. When you step across that continent, you can step across the city if you want to, just go around your block. You have the same kind of experience. If you think that in your small sphere of things that you got a lock on the world and there's no need for you to expand your understanding, and you try to walk outside of your normal environment, you'll be challenged by almost everything. But if you have the spirit that this world is one, Allah's reality is one, and that the mindset we carry is the mindset that most progressive human beings around the world will have, and if they don't have it, they aspire to get it. If you have that already in your mind, then you can be successful business. But you can't go around the world thinking that the Chinese is the best businessman, or the Jews or something like that. You have to think you're the best businessman. When you step out there, you have to realize that I bring value to the table. I don't come seeking. I see so many of our brothers out there going to these people talking about, show me this.
A vast virus database has been updated.
That's me this time. But you find so many of our people going to other people thinking that they have a better understanding of how we can function in a global community. I'm saying to you, you step out there and you have the right understanding about yourself. Allah just bring that human being up all the time. It's a human world. It's a human world. And human beings respect human beings. And you show the kind of insight, the kind of sensitivity, the kind of consideration for their situation and some value for your own situation, then the marketplace opens up to you. Now, there's lawyers all over the world. I remember we was in China, and we were negotiating a banking situation. And I went and met with an attorney in China that is a student in American law as well as Chinese law. And you know, some of you trying to do business over across the seas, you find you can bring a whole lot of money into them countries, but you can't take a whole lot out. You better have your financial structure, otherwise you can't get the money out of the country. And so we were struggling with that problem in terms of being confronted with how we get the money out. The integrity that lawyer saw in us brought him to our aid, and he set up an international banking, or was prepared to set up an international banking situation for us that we had no idea about. So my point being, I didn't know how to do it, but because we were able to connect on a human basis, man to man, human to human, and he was empathetic toward helping us be able to achieve what we was trying to achieve. He showed us the design on how to get the money out of the country legally. I'm not talking about anything crooked, but you have to set up certain kind of legal structures to be able to get the money out of in and out of the country. So I use that as an example to say there's great opportunity to do business all over the world. But if you go out there hiding in the shadows of your real self, people see that. If you a mouse barking like a bulldog, then pretty soon people find out ain't nothing but a mouse in that bulldog. So you got to have a sense of certainty about who you are and what is the value you bring. And the world of opportunity is open. I've not been to a country, nowhere, that did not happen.
Thank you. That's all.
That's fine.
Any other questions? About 5 minutes left. Any comment to what the Imam said to us today?
Assalamualaikum, Imam. This is the Catherine from Grand Rapids. I want to say I thank Imam Noah for bringing us what he brought us this morning and what he said about trusting in Allah and doing what we're supposed to do as Muslims and trusting Allah that He's going to be with us. Brothers, there's nothing in the world that we can't achieve. And that's what the Imam is trying to tell us.
Right.
And we go out to this world with all our confidence and trusting in Allah. There's nothing that we can't do as a people. We have did it before and we can do it again.
Alhamdulillah.
And I thank you, Imam Noah, for bringing us that this morning.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Edward Abdelaziz. Also, what I see and understand also, and I really appreciate this Imam Noah, is that he said the signs and symbols come through the prophets. You know, from Solomon to Moses. You know, looking at the true potential for all humanity. And it makes me reflect on the house that's being built, and it's being built on our true human potential. So now, I can begin to see now that through the study of these potentials, that we can begin to really step into some bigger and better things. So once again, I want to thank you also for what you brought to us this morning. I pray Allah continue to bless us all to be able to grasp this and move forward.
Alhamdulillah. Well, I want to say briefly, Brother Imam, as we can get ready to get off. I don't want... Go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. This is Inspirational. I'm coming to Bonnie from Detroit, and I want to say how much I appreciate Brother Noah, which you gave us today, and to remind us that we come to the table with the human excellence. We always come to the table feeling that we have nothing to offer, and we sell ourselves away so short.
Right.
But we come to the table with that human excellence. Mm-hmm. And we can connect with people that way.
That's right.
And I appreciate you reminding us of things.
Right. So often in society we throw that away. That's what I'm talking about, how humanity that has evolved under this intellectual design, they've diminished the importance of moral and human excellence. And so we sit there and we got it, but then because they don't put a value on it, we think we don't have it because they don't put a value. But Allah put a value on it. Allah don't say I judge you by how much money you got and how powerful you are in the society. He judge you on your conviction and your moral excellence.
Thank you, sister, for your are there any other? Assalamu alaikum. Hakeem Ali from Detroit, Michigan. Yes, sir. I really enjoyed the presentation of Imam Noah, and I just wanted to say that it was a group of us that motored over to Chicago this past weekend. It's an opportunity to visit the paper house, and they're going to have to close and move. It is very important about the Muslim Journal. And this is, of course, a connection that we have as a Muslim community that goes throughout the earth, all over the world. That we should continue it and hold fast to it, because many of the people credit the starting up of the Muslim Journal with Malcolm X. But I'm here to say that there was a paper much before Malcolm X. But I want to say that we should continue it. And for a 6-month prescription is only $43 for 6 months. And we should all come behind that and support it. Let me just say this. There is rumor that, I don't know if it's certain, but it's around about over 2 million Muslims in America, followers of Imam Muhammad. Just think about $43 for 6 months, but just half that number, say 1 million. How many millions would that be able to push us into the future? I just wanted to make those comments. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, you know, and as the minutes go away, I do want to emphasize what the brother's saying. And see, a lot of times when we be theorized about being great in this world, it starts with little things just like that. You don't go and get to greatness all of a sudden. You start with little bitty pieces, and that's an essential building block piece. And I hope that Allah bless us to take that to heart, because we shouldn't be sitting around later on moaning about look what they did, and we are the they.
I just want to say Imam Ali emailed me and requesting all the conveners, the state conveners around the Midwest, to encourage the people to spend, or each masjid to spend from $100 to $200 to support the paper. So tomorrow, unless Imam Noah have a phone number or address, tomorrow I will have this for you to send a call in to on God to make that connection, so you can make contributions. Those of you who are able to do so, we really appreciate that, and we pray that Allah reward you for it. We are on the hour. We like to end. We like to start on time. We also like to end on time. Again, thank you, Brother Imam, for bringing this information. Thank all of you for coming online. I would like to ask this brother Luzon from Wichita. Is he on? Are you on, Brother Luzon?